listeners, let me ask you a question. When you think about those on our planet who do not have water, you probably think about, I don't know, parts of Africa, maybe the Sahara, Eastern Africa. Maybe you think of deserts, really, really dry areas. You probably don't think about Detroit, Michigan. Do you? I know I didn't. Well, I regret to report, folks, we need to start thinking of the city of Detroit like that, because you may have seen this. Tens of thousands of citizens of Detroit, Michigan are having their water cut off. This is such a crisis that a local activist group, they are the Detroit People's Water Board, and a Canadian group called the Blue Planet Project, are actually calling for assistance from the United Nations. They've actually filed a report with the United Nations, and they are asking the United Nations to intervene on behalf of tens of thousands of Americans living in Detroit who no longer have water. And this is insane. Like, we've talked about Detroit before on the show. You know how I think the last time we talked about was how the city of Detroit, the city workers are having their pensions stolen from them. You know, we all know about the massive unemployment, of all the manufacturing jobs offshored, the unelected city managers being put into place all across Michigan. But let's talk specifically about the water crisis in Detroit. So the report filed with the United Nations, the group gives a little bit of context how in the last decade, the cost of water has actually gone up 110% in the city of Detroit, while the poverty rate has actually climbed to 40% in Detroit. It hasn't climbed 40%. The poverty rate in Detroit is 40%. Think about that number, 40%. 4 out of 10 people living in the city of Detroit are living in poverty. 4 out of 10. And it's also, it's so crazy. Let's read a few passages from the report that these activists and human rights groups filed with the United Nations. This is from the report, quote, "In March 2014, the Water and Sewer Department announced it would be shutting off water service for 1,500 to 3,000 customers per week. According to a DWSD document obtained by the Sierra Club, there are more than 179,000 residential water accounts in Detroit. By April 2014, more than 83,000 of them were past due." End quote. Let's look at those numbers again for a second, okay? So in Detroit, 179,000 residential water accounts. 83,000 of that 179,000 accounts are past due. So close to half of those accounts can't afford to make their payments for water. And again, this is not even 83,000 people. That would be bad enough. If 83,000 people didn't have water, that would be a crisis in and among itself. But this is 83,000 accounts. That's a lot more people. These are like family households or apartments. They may have who knows how many people, anywhere from, 1 person to 10 or 12. Who knows how many people are living in some of these units. 83,000 accounts. Let's go back to the report. Reading from the report again, quote, "The average amount owed per household was just over $540. In a report by the DWSD's director dated May 28, 2014, it is noted that there were, quote, 44,273 notices sent to customers in April 2014, resulting in 3,025 shutoffs for non-payment. The water department has said it will turn the water off to all residences that owe money by the end of the summer." End quote. I'm kind of speechless here. What the hell is wrong with us in this country? Cutting off people's water. Hell, I've had my water out for a couple of days and it's friggin' horrible. Not being able to flush the toilet or shower or cook. It's a nightmare not having water for a couple of days. The report actually describes some of these shutoffs and what goes on with them. Quote, they were given no warning and had no time to fill buckets, sinks, or tubs before losing access to water. In some cases, the cutoffs occurred before the deadline given in notices that were set by the city. Sick people have been left without running water and working toilets. People recovering from surgery cannot wash and change bandages. Children cannot bathe, and parents cannot cook. End quote. We're the richest country in the world. We are the richest country in the history of the world, and we are cutting off the water for our poorest citizens. We're the richest, and we're cutting off the bloody water. Not only is this a human rights violation, it's something that actually might, when you look at what we're going to go back to the report, actually might break up families living in Detroit. Reading from the report again, quote, with 2/3 of the water cutoffs happening in homes with children, families are concerned and afraid to speak out. They understandably fear, based on experience, that child welfare authorities will remove children from their homes in accordance with state policy that there be working utilities in all homes housing children. End quote. And look, obviously, children need to live somewhere that has water. They do. But you know who else needs to live somewhere that has water? Adults. Adults need water too. Let me think who else. You know, like the middle-aged, the elderly. Who else? Who else needs water? You know what? I know who else needs water. Everybody. Everybody needs bloody water. So maybe the answer is not cutting off families' water and then taking the children and putting them in the care of the state. Maybe instead we can just keep the bloody water running. How about that? Or even better, maybe we can get the adults living in poverty a job. How about that? A job with a living bloody wage so they can pay their stupid water bill. How about that? Is that such a crazy idea? Seeing that this is the richest country in the world, the richest country in the history of the world? Let's go back to the report again. Reading the report, quote, estimated that the average water bill for a family of 4 is $150 to $200 per month. The MWRO states, quote, for thousands of people in the city and the surrounding suburbs as well, this represents as much as 20% of their monthly income. End quote. 20%. 20% of their income just for water. And again, 40% of the people living in Detroit are living in poverty. We should be ashamed of ourselves. We should be ashamed of ourselves as a country. Good goddamn, we need the United Nations. We need the friggin' United Nations to step in here in the United States. Where's the governor of Michigan on this? Where's the president of the United States on this? When tens of thousands of Americans are having their water cut off, where are they? Maybe we can be shamed by the international community. Maybe we can be shamed into giving our poorest citizens in the United States, maybe we can be shamed into giving them water. Maybe those living in poverty, maybe for those living in poverty, water is just too much to ask. Water is too much to ask from the richest country in the history of the world. We'll be right back.